She shouted. That was 20 years ago. It doesn't mean anything anymore. After I learned something from her past, before our marriage. After I found out everything I believed about our life was based on a lie. And what I did next? No one saw it coming. Not her, not our daughter, not me at first glance. It started with chicken parmesan. Homemade. Lydia's favorite. I'd even picked up a drink I knew she liked. One of those overpriced ones I used to think tasted like oak and regret. Ellie was home from college for the weekend, and Lydia's old college roommate, Michelle, was in town and dropping by for dinner. We were supposed to have a casual night, reminiscing, laughing, eating too much. Just the usual midlife nostalgia soup. I cleaned the grill pan. Ellie chopped basil. Lydia set the table while humming a 90s pop song she used to dance to in her dorm room. It should have been a perfect night. The kind where you don't think about the cracks in your marriage or how your daughter keeps glancing at her phone like it's more interesting than real people. Michelle arrived just after 6 with a fake laugh, a new haircut that screamed, "I don't remember what you like, so here's something from the middle shelf." I gave her the usual hug, made polite banter, and pretended I wasn't exhausted from work. Dinner started light. Stories about dorm drama. Professors they hated. The time Lydia got locked out of her apartment late at night. I smiled along and tried not to feel like a spectator at my own dinner. Then Michelle, halfway through her second glass, dropped a surprise like it was an olive. "So whatever happened to that guy you used to spend time with before the wedding? What was his name?" Chase. Fork. Pause. Chew. Silence. I looked at Lydia. Her face twitched, just slightly. Michelle blinked, clearly realizing the misfire. "Oh," she said quickly, smiling wide, too wide. "You never told him about that, huh?" The room turned to ice. Ellie looked up, confused. I set my glass down slowly. "Told me what, exactly?" I asked. Lydia let out a nervous laugh. "It was nothing, John. Just college stuff. Way before us." Michelle laughed too, but the kind you use to cover a mess you can't clean up. I turned to Lydia, my voice flat. "Who's Chase?" She blinked. "He was a guy. From a study group. That's all. But Michelle said you were close." "It was 20 years ago." Lydia suddenly snapped, eyes blazing. "That was 20 years ago. It doesn't mean anything anymore." And just like that, the whole table went still. Except the storm that had just started in me. The room had gone quiet, one of those thick, suffocating silences that presses in like the air before a thunderstorm. Michelle's smile had vanished. Ellie was frozen mid-bite. And Lydia? Lydia had the frozen look of someone stuck between swallowing surprise and biting back a reaction. 20 years ago? I repeated slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. That close to our wedding? Lydia crossed her arms. "John, it was college. We were barely even adults. Why are you acting like this matters?" "It matters because you never told me." "Because it was nothing," she snapped, then added quickly, "It was a mistake. A blip. It didn't change anything." Michelle muttered something about using the bathroom and quietly slipped out of the room like a breeze ducking under a door crack. Typical. She knew what she started. "I want to understand who I married." Ellie suddenly chimed in, her voice tight. "Guys, come on. This is ancient history. Can we not turn this into a whole thing?" I turned to her, trying not to let my frustration show. "Ellie, I'm sorry. You're right. It's just surprising." Lydia jumped in, seizing the moment. "Exactly. It's not worth risking what we've built. We have a life. A family. Can't we just let this go?" Let this go. Like I could just smooth over 20 years of trust and pretend it wasn't now coming apart at the seams. We ate the rest of dinner in strained silence. Michelle never came back to the table. Probably too embarrassed. Ellie pushed food around her plate but didn't eat much. Lydia stared out the window as if she could will the evening into passing quicker. After the dishes were cleared and the night had slowed to a crawl, I found myself standing in the doorway of Ellie's room. She was half lounging on her bed, scrolling through something on her phone, pretending like nothing was wrong. I watched her for a moment, unnoticed, the faint hum of her desk fan masking my footsteps. She looked so much like Lydia. Same eyes. Same nervous little smirk when she was pretending to be calm. But that night, I couldn't stop the thought from forming. Just a breeze at first. A whisper. What if she's? I don't want to think about it. The next morning, the world outside my window looked normal. Traffic honked in rhythm. Sunlight glanced off parked cars. But inside my head, there was a fog I couldn't shake. The kind that creeps into your bones, making every movement feel heavier than it should. I sat in my office at work, staring at a spreadsheet that refused to make sense. The numbers blurred. Deadlines floated by like autumn leaves. I kept replaying that moment at dinner, Lydia's voice, sharp and defensive. It doesn't mean anything anymore. But it did. It meant everything now. I'd built my life on the assumption that what we had was real. That we'd started clean, grown together, forged something solid. But the way she spoke last night, how easily she dismissed it, it stirred something deeper in me. Not just betrayal. Not just sadness. Doubt. And once doubt takes root, it grows. I kept seeing Ellie's face in my mind. Not the 19-year-old version that left her dishes in the sink and lived on cold coffee, but the tiny girl with pigtails who used to run barefoot through the house, calling me daddy like it was the only word she needed. Was that real? Back at home, the mood had shifted too, just more quietly. Lydia sat in the kitchen, sipping something from a chipped mug, staring out the window like she was watching a storm roll in from far off. The sky was blue, but her face wasn't. Ellie entered the room, her steps slow and thoughtful. She didn't scroll her phone this time. Didn't toss out a joke or a sarcastic jab. Just stood there. "Mom," she said quietly. Lydia turned, blinking like she'd just come out of a dream. "Yeah, hon. We need to talk." Lydia straightened. "About what?" Ellie hesitated, then pulled out the chair across from her mother. "Last night. You and Dad. That whole thing with, you know." Lydia gave a weary sigh. "Ellie, please. It's complicated. And it was forever ago. Your dad's blowing it way out of proportion." "Is he?" Ellie asked softly. "Or are you downplaying it because it's easier?" Lydia stared at her daughter, her expression wobbling just slightly. "You told me once," Ellie continued, "that honesty keeps families strong. That even if something's uncomfortable, it's better to face it than bury it." "That's true," Lydia said cautiously. "Then I think you should tell Dad everything. Not the edited version. The real story." Lydia didn't answer at first. Her fingers tapped against the side of her mug. "Ellie, this isn't a movie. People make mistakes. We're allowed to move on." "Maybe," Ellie said. "But if you keep lying about those mistakes, they don't stay buried." Lydia narrowed her eyes. "Where is this coming from?" Ellie didn't answer directly. She stood up, her expression unreadable. "When Dad gets home tonight, I want to talk to both of you. Together." Then she walked out, leaving her mother staring at the half-empty mug and a question that now echoed louder than ever. Because what Ellie didn't say, what she was still deciding, was whether she'd bring up the test she'd been secretly considering herself. I came home that night with a strange calm around me, like the eerie stillness before rainfall. I walked through the front door, loosened my tie, and set my briefcase down like always. But the air inside the house felt different. Heavy, like something unspoken had taken up residence. Lydia was in the kitchen again, trying to act normal. Pasta simmered on the stove. Her voice was light, rehearsed. "Dinner's almost ready," she said, not turning to look at me. I nodded and headed to the living room. Ellie was sitting on the couch, legs crossed, phone in her lap, but untouched. She looked up at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen on her face since she was a little girl and broke her arm falling off her bike. "Hey, Dad," she said. "Can we talk after dinner?" "Sure," I said, surprised. "Everything okay?" She just gave a tight nod. "Just stuff we need to say." During dinner, the conversation was minimal. A few obligatory comments about school, work, the weather. Lydia chewed her food like it might reveal answers if she bit hard enough. I could feel her watching both of us, gauging whether we'd say anything. Ellie was unusually polite, almost formal. When we cleared the plates, Lydia offered to make tea, but Ellie cut in. "No, we're doing this now." She looked at me first. "Dad, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." I set my fork down, my heart already tightening. "Go ahead. Do you think there's a chance we're not biologically related?" The silence that followed wasn't silence at all. It was a roaring wind, years of quiet love, bedtime stories, scraped knees, school plays, whipping through my chest like they were being yanked away one by one. I met her gaze. "Why would you ask that?" "Because of what happened at dinner. Because of how you looked at me after Mom said what she said." She swallowed. "And because I've always kind of wondered." I glanced at Lydia. Her expression was frozen. Pale. Like she'd been caught in a sudden downpour with nowhere to hide. "Ellie," I said slowly, "I've loved you every single day of your life. That hasn't changed." She nodded, almost tearfully. "I know. That's why I need to know. For real. No more pretending." She turned to Lydia. "Mom, I want the truth. All of it. Who was Chase? What really happened before the wedding? Did Dad know everything? Because if he didn't, and I'm not his, I need to hear it from you. Now." Lydia's mouth parted, but no words came out. She blinked like she was underwater, trying to figure out which way was up. She began. Then she stopped. Her hands curled around the edge of the table. I never meant for any of this to come out like this. Ellie straightened, her voice steady. But it did. And in that moment, I saw it, something shifting behind Lydia's eyes. The tide was finally turning. And the truth? The kitchen never felt so small. Lydia stood across from Ellie, arms at her sides, fingers twitching like they were trying to grab something invisible. Her face was drained of color, the confident tone she'd always used in arguments nowhere to be found. I'd seen her lie before, little white ones, sure, like most married couples. But this silence? This was different. Mom, Ellie said again, firmer this time. I need the truth. Lydia swallowed, then sat down slowly, like her knees had given out beneath her. Chase was someone, she said. Someone from the past I tried to forget. We were together for a short time. It started before your father and I got engaged, and yes, it overlapped. My heart didn't even beat faster. It was like hearing thunder in the distance. You brace for the noise, but when it finally arrives, it's less shocking than the silence before it. Ellie's eyes narrowed. So Dad didn't know. Lydia looked at me briefly, then away. No, he didn't. And you married him anyway, without telling him you were with someone else. Lydia nodded. I sat down now, mostly because I felt like the walls were pressing in. I kept my voice steady. Tell her everything. Lydia looked at me, then at our daughter. She stared down at her hands like they might vanish if she didn't keep her eyes on them. After graduation, I learned I was expecting. I hoped it was yours, John. I needed to believe that. I wanted it to be true. Ellie flinched like someone had cracked a window in a winter storm. Wait. Assumed. I leaned forward. You never confirmed it? No, Lydia said. I didn't want to. I didn't want to complicate things. You didn't want to tell the truth, I corrected. I was scared. Lydia's voice cracked. I knew if I told you, you'd leave me. And I was afraid of facing parenthood without support. You were stable. You were kind. You were everything I needed, everything I didn't want to lose. Ellie stood up, pacing now. So you gambled. On me. On him. On our whole family. Lydia nodded slowly, shame finally pooling in her eyes. I told myself it didn't matter. That love is what makes a father, not blood. That we'd be happy. And we were, for a long time, weren't we? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Ellie turned to me. Dad, what do you think? What did I think? That the woman I built a life with had lied for 2 decades? That my daughter, the one I rocked to sleep and carried on my shoulders, might not be mine? I looked at her. Really looked. She had Lydia's cheekbones. My quiet stubbornness. Or at least I always thought so. I think, I said carefully, there's a difference between being a father and being a donor. Ellie looked down, biting her lip. Her eyes welled. Then she said, I want to take a test. Lydia's face snapped up. Ellie, no. You don't need to do that. Yes, she replied, voice clear now. I do. I can't keep wondering. I won't live with this half-truth anymore. She turned to me again. Will you do it with me? And here's the part no one expects. I hesitated. She turned to me again. Will you do it with me? And here's the part no one expects. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want the truth, but because some part of me, a quiet, broken part, knew that once the door opened, there was no closing it. No pretending. No going back to blissful ignorance. But Ellie stood there with eyes that had once looked up at me with finger paints on her cheeks and scraped knees from playgrounds. She deserved more than hesitation. Yes, I said. Let's do it. Lydia jolted from her chair. John, wait. This isn't necessary. Please don't drag her into this. I looked at her calm, direct. You already did. She backed down, deflated. Ellie didn't say anything right away. She just stood there, still holding herself like someone who'd finally stepped out into the cold after years of pretending it was warm. Then, after a long moment, she spoke. I don't want to do this at home, she said quietly. I want it to be real. Official. Something we can't pretend didn't happen. I nodded. We'll go tomorrow. First thing. Lydia opened her mouth like she wanted to object again, but no words came out. Whatever argument she had died on the vine. She just turned, walked to the sink, and started rinsing an already clean glass. The sound of running water filled the room like static. That night, I barely slept. I watched the ceiling as it faded from moonlit gray to pale dawn. And in the morning, I drove Ellie to the lab. Neither of us said much on the way. The roads were clear, but my thoughts weren't. She sat beside me with her hair pulled back, chin up, like someone bracing for a storm. I kept my eyes on the road and my hands at 10 and 2, pretending like we were just running errands. But I knew this was something else. This was the kind of drive that changes things. At the lab, the process was quick. The technician was polite, sterile, emotionless, like this was just one of 100 tests that day. We gave our samples, signed the forms, and left. On the way home, Ellie finally broke the silence. "Do you think this will change anything?" she asked. I thought about that for a long second. "I think it'll confirm something," I said. "One way or the other." We didn't speak again until we got home. Lydia was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, as if she could will everything back to normal just by standing there. We said nothing to her. The test was out of our hands now. All we could do was wait. 3 days passed. They felt longer than most seasons. I went to work like usual, but I barely got anything done. My emails piled up, phone calls blurred, and I stared through windows like the answers might appear in the clouds. Lydia floated around the house like a ghost. She cleaned things that didn't need cleaning, rearranged furniture, pretended like there was a world where all of this would go away if she just scrubbed hard enough. Ellie kept to herself. She didn't mope. She didn't lash out. She just watched. Me. Her mother. Everything. Like someone waiting for a verdict she already half expected. And then, on a Friday afternoon, I got the email. Subject line, "Results, available now." I sat there for a long time before I clicked it. I don't know why I hesitated. Maybe because part of me still wanted to believe in the story we told ourselves. That I had a family. That love alone had been enough to hold it together. But when I finally opened the file, the words stared back at me with the kind of clarity you can't argue with. The test showed a 0% match. It wasn't me. 19 years. Every milestone. Every memory. Every father-daughter dance, scraped knee, bedtime story, road trip, graduation, all of it, biologically speaking, belonged to someone else. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just sat still. It was like standing in a snowstorm and letting it settle on your shoulders, bit by bit, until you can't feel anything at all. Ellie was upstairs. I walked up slowly, like every step was through sand. I knocked on her door. She opened it fast, too fast. She'd been waiting, just like me. "It's in," I said. She followed me downstairs. We didn't speak. Lydia was in the living room, flipping through a book she clearly hadn't read a word of. She looked up when we walked in, saw my face. Her hands fell into her lap. "You got it," she said, barely above a whisper. I handed the printout to Ellie. I didn't have it in me to read it aloud. She took it, eyes scanning the page. Then she sat down, slow and quiet, as if her legs no longer trusted the floor. "I knew it," she said softly. Lydia turned pale. "Ellie, you lied to me my whole life." Her voice wasn't angry. It was heartbreak wrapped in calm. "You told me my dad was a man who stood by us, who loved us. And he did. But you knew. And you never gave him a choice." Lydia stood now, shaking slightly. "I didn't want to break this family. I thought I was doing what was best." Ellie looked up at her. "You thought for him." "I loved him," Lydia said. "I still love him." I finally spoke. "That's not love, Lydia. That's fear wrapped in convenience." She looked at me like she wanted to scream, or cry, or maybe both. But all she did was sit down and cover her face with her hands. I turned to Ellie. "I'm still your father. You don't have to call me anything else. But I need you to know I didn't lie to you. I didn't hide this." She nodded. "I know. That's why I still want you in my life." And that was it. Just a stillness none of us could escape. Later that night, as I stood by the bedroom window, watching the wind rustle through the trees, I realized something. The house was quiet the next morning. Not peaceful, just quiet in that hollow, vacuumed-out way a room gets after everyone stopped pretending. I brewed my coffee, out of habit more than need, and watched the sun edge over the neighbor's rooftop like it was just another day. But I knew it wasn't. I'd spent 2 decades loving a woman who never told me the full truth. There are lines you can redraw after they've been crossed. This wasn't one of them. Ellie didn't come downstairs right away. Lydia lingered by the hallway, hovering like she wanted to say something, but didn't know which version of herself to speak from. Wife, mother, liar. I didn't look at her. I just sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through real estate listings. Small homes. Rentals. Nothing extravagant. I didn't want extravagance. I wanted distance. By 10 a.m., I'd called a moving company. Told them I'd need a storage unit. Maybe short-term. Maybe not. Then I called a lawyer. No threats. No ultimatums. Just logistics. Clean, quiet, deliberate. I wasn't going to raise hell. I was going to raise standards. When Ellie finally came down, she looked like she hadn't slept either. She gave me a soft, "Hey," and I gave her a smile that was half pain, half love. "I'm moving out," I said gently. Her eyes widened. "Dad, wait." "I have to," I said. "I love you, and I'm proud of the person you are. But I can't stay here and pretend any of this is still what it was." She nodded, holding back tears. "You're not leaving me, are you?" "No," I said. "But I'm leaving this house. This history. I need space to figure out what comes next. And you do too." She stepped forward and hugged me, arms tight, like she knew this wasn't just a goodbye to the roof we shared, but to the version of her childhood that had just been shattered. Lydia didn't come into the kitchen until Ellie left. Maybe she was listening. Maybe she'd finally run out of spins. "You're really doing this," she said. I looked at her, long, quiet, calm. "I already did." She blinked. "I didn't ask for this to happen." "No," I said. "You just made sure I never got to know it did." She started to say something else, but I held up a hand. "This isn't a discussion anymore. I'm not punishing you. I'm just done." That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I slept in the guest room, with the door closed. My phone lit up with a dozen messages, from work, from friends, from Ellie asking if I was okay. I answered one of them. "A realtor. I'm ready to see places," I typed. "Soon as possible." But I wasn't just preparing to leave. I was also preparing something else. Love can cloud your eyes. But disappointment? That sharpens every detail. Lydia thought the damage was done, that now it was just fallout. But I had a plan. She'd hidden the truth for 20 years. And I was ready to uncover everything she thought was gone for good. People think payback looks loud. Yelling, doors slamming, chaos in the air. But the kind that really changes people, the kind that sticks, is quiet. I'd been gone 3 weeks. I found a 2-bedroom rental on the other side of town. Plain walls, hardwood floors, no family photos. It was perfect. Clean, neutral, unburdened. Ellie texted me a few times each week. We met for lunch once. I still couldn't look at her without feeling that strange ache, a love that didn't match the biology, but refused to go away. She didn't ask to be born into this mess. But Lydia did. And I had no intention of letting her walk away from it untouched. It started with the will. My father had left me a sizable trust, something I'd kept separate all these years out of old-fashioned values. I never touched it, never needed it. But Lydia knew about it, and I knew she was counting on it being part of her future. I removed her name. Then I moved on to the house. The deed was mine alone, courtesy of a cautious lawyer friend back in my 20s. Lydia never knew. Not fully. She'd signed what she thought were routine refinance documents 10 years ago. I had them reviewed. She had no legal claim. So I listed the house. 3 offers in the first week. I accepted the third, cash. It would close fast. Then I closed our shared bank account. Moved my half. Left hers. And finally, the finishing move. I arranged a family dinner. Just the 3 of us. "Why?" Lydia asked when I called. "Because I want closure," I said. "You said you still love me. Let's see if you mean it." We met at her favorite Italian place. The same one we used to celebrate anniversaries at. The same one where, years ago, she told me she wanted to start a family. Full circle. Ellie looked nervous when she arrived. Lydia showed up last, dressed like she was preparing for a negotiation. We ordered. Talked a little. I kept the conversation light. Then, when dessert came, I slid a small envelope across the table. "What's this?" Lydia asked, eyes narrowing. "My goodbye," I said. She opened it. Inside was a printed letter. No legal jargon. No dramatics. Just the facts. The house was sold. She had 30 days to vacate. The trust she thought she'd inherit through me? Reassigned. Our joint accounts? Split. My lawyer would be in touch with formal divorce paperwork. And a final note. I would not be pursuing custody, claims, or conversations. I was done. Lydia paled. "You blindsided me," she whispered. "No," I said, calm as ever. "You did that 20 years ago. I'm just responding." Ellie looked between us, her lips trembling. "Dad." I turned to her, softening. "I'll always be there for you. But I can't live in a house built on a lie. I won't." Lydia tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. She reached out across the table, but I stood up before her fingers could touch mine. And what did I do next? I thought, walking away from that table, from that life, from the version of me that had tolerated it all. No one saw it coming. Not her. Not our daughter. Not even me. They say when an avalanche hits, it doesn't sound like chaos. It's muffled. Heavy. I see. That's what Lydia's voice sounded like when she called me the next day. Please, she said, don't do this. But it was already done. The house she tried to control with silence was now in escrow. The lawyers were coordinating signatures. The account she used for groceries and hair appointments was missing my deposits. And the man she thought she could quietly steer for the rest of her life? He was gone. I didn't return her first few calls. Or her fifth. By the seventh, I picked up, because I wanted to hear it. I didn't think you'd actually do it, she said. I know, I said. You thought I was too loyal. Too safe. She didn't deny it. You said you wanted closure, she murmured. Is this what that looks like to you? Shutting us out? No, I said plainly. This is what it looks like when I stop being the backup plan. Silence. I gave you a chance to come clean. You chose the easier story. I gave you a home, a life, and you let me believe it was mine alone. I loved you. I trusted you. And you turned both into something to hide behind. John, her voice cracked. But I hung up, because there was nothing left to hear. Ellie reached out 2 days later. She met me at a quiet park. No makeup, just a hoodie and that cautious smile she wore when she was 5 and broke the TV with a soccer ball. She hugged me like she thought it might be the last time. It's weird, she said, sitting beside me on the bench. You're not the one who gave me life, she said. But you gave me everything else. I nodded. And that won't change. She looked at me. Even after everything? Especially after everything, I said. You didn't lie to me. You didn't build a life on a secret. She stared out at the trees. Mom's not doing great. She'll survive, I said. She survived hiding the truth for 2 decades. She'll survive this. She keeps asking if I'll help her fix things. I gave a tired smile. That's her pattern. She breaks it. You fix it. I know it well. I don't know how to be in the middle. You don't have to be. You're allowed to draw your own lines now. Ellie nodded slowly. You're really not coming back. No, I said gently. I'm moving forward. The last time I saw Lydia was during the final signing at the attorney's office. She looked older. Not broken, just unmasked. The woman who once believed charm could erase choices. She didn't speak. She signed. And when she handed me the pin across the table, I thanked her. Thank you, I said, for showing me who you really are. She winced like that hurt more than any insult. But I didn't walk out with bitterness. I walked out with freedom. That night, in my new place, I poured a cup of tea, opened the window, and let the air in. No lies. No buried truths. Just space. For the first time in 25 years, I was alone, but not empty. It's strange how fast life rearranges itself when the truth finally lands. The house I once obsessed over, every faucet fixed, every garden bed trimmed, is someone else's now. Probably a young couple starting fresh, with hopes and holiday plans and matching coffee mugs. Good for them. I left the big furniture, the heirloom stuff, even the dining table. I couldn't look at it without hearing Lydia's voice. That was 20 years ago. Some echoes aren't worth keeping. I still see Ellie. Not every day. Not like before. But enough. We text. Grab lunch. I send her articles I think she'd like, and she sends me memes that barely make sense. But it's something. And that something is built on honesty now. She doesn't call me stepdad. She still calls me dad. And I let her. Because the connection between us has not been broken. As for Lydia, she never apologized the way I think she wanted to. She tried. Through roundabout words. Through, I wish things were different emails, and I didn't know how to fix it voicemails. But I never wanted an apology from her mouth. I wanted it from her actions. And when I saw none of that, no ownership, no real accountability, I knew I'd made the right call. Her new apartment's a few streets over from our old place. She stayed close to Ellie, maybe hoping that proximity could substitute for character. It won't. She asked to meet for coffee once. I said no. Some chapters don't get a reunion. Just a final page. Time to heal. I'm okay. I'm not rebuilding the life I had. I'm building one I chose. Alone, yes. But honest.